We are looking this afternoon at the turbulence in agriculture, a subject that's emerged quite a few times in our discussions already, but is still causing tremendous headaches in the Doha round. Well, our keynote speaker will be looking at whether a win-win situation is still possible in this area between developed and developing countries, and he knows the subject pretty well. He's Switzerland ambassador to the UN and EFTA at the permanent mission here. Please welcome Lucius Vasset.
Agriculture, by tradition, is usually done by farmers, and farmers don't like turbulences because they're used to turbulences from the meteorological side, and the weather is certainly their first international challenge. Secondly, they are working in an environment which is difficult, and how can you establish a level playing field with uncompetitive farmers on one side and very competitive industries on the other side? What happened between the 90s and the start of the Doha round in 2001? Strong competitive agricultural exporters such as New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, managed to increase their exports. Developing countries without competitive agriculture and without having niches on specific product categories didn't find new market access opportunities. These were the premises when we started Doha, with three schools of thoughts. The agricultural exporters in the US, they said, well, we want a round, but purely market access. Agriculture, industrial products, services. Japan, Korea, and the European countries said, well, in order to be able to pay for the costs of the exercise in agriculture, we need a balance in other areas. Therefore, we need rules, we need trade and environment, we need trade facilitation, investment, competition policy, transparency in public procurement. And the third group, a group of developing countries, especially India, said, well, we don't want a round. Doha is a masterpiece of constructive ambiguity and expresses these three schools of thoughts. And whenever you address the issues, you have these same old patterns that risk to block the mechanics. The big exporters in the US, in Canada, in Australia, where are they looking at? They are looking at big markets. They want to export to Japan. But if Japan were to open its rice market tomorrow, do you think that they will buy Uncle Ben's rice? No. They will buy rice from Vietnam, from China, from Indonesia, and so on. In pharmaceuticals, 50% of the world market is the US. 20% is Europe, 20% is Japan. The rest of the world, 10%. It's clear that from a business point of view, people are looking at these markets and not at what happens in the non-markets. In WTO, we are not setting all the problems in agriculture. We are talking about trade in agriculture. I think that's a very big distinction, because the agricultural policies, they are shaped at the national level or at the European Union level, with sometimes, fortunately, some references to the work of the FAO. You look at the tremendous increase of agricultural prices in the world markets. Agricultural exporters don't need immediately a deal because they get it for free. They can export. Second consequence is the US, with their domestic constraints and their shift to energy production via agricultural goods, participate to the increase of these prices and are no longer that much interested in a market opening because their agriculture is less competitive today compared to Brazil, compared to Argentina, compared to Australia, in many commodities the US used to export. One of the big export lobbying of the US in Switzerland was green asparagus. They had 85% of the Swiss market, but every year they came to say that they want market access. The second product they wanted to open the Swiss market was fruit juice. But in the last 5 years they have not come back because now the green asparagus is coming from Mexico. It's a US investment in Mexico, but still it's from Mexico. And the fruit juice is coming from Brazil because they are more competitive. So the patterns of trade are changing, and I don't know whether the files of my colleagues are changing sufficiently rapidly so that this has an impact on the negotiating positions. I think the issue of food security becomes much more important than in the last 20 years, especially if there is a competition between the consumption of agricultural products for energy production and for food. And then we come to the very ethical question, can we destroy agricultural products to produce energy when people are starving? That's a big challenge for the next decades.